Greetings family, welcome back to my channel. In this particular video, I would like to discuss some political events which are taking place in the Bahamas. Okay, first on the agenda, I would like to discuss the CARICOM meetings which are taking place in the Bahamas. Recently, leaders of the Caribbean community have convened assemblies in the Bahamas to discuss mutual interests and to deepen collaboration between our nations. Okay, as you all know, the Bahamas is not technically a part of the Caribbean geographically, but in terms of our proximity, we are very close. We have citizens from each of our countries which freely move between our territories, and generally there's an atmosphere of collaboration. Okay, now as far as my knowledge, the Bahamas was not officially a part of CARICOM, but was always an affiliate. Alright, the Bahamas was not a direct participant, but we've always had ties to CARICOM. Alright, I just want to make that point clear. One of the chief issues that many of us were waiting for CARICOM to discuss was reparations. Reparations for slavery, which has affected all of the nations in the diaspora. Alright, and apparently a few of the members of CARICOM made reference to reparations and claimed that it should have always been on the agenda. Apparently CARICOM has a reparations apparatus at work, but as it stands, we have not seen any substantial progress in the attainment of reparations. We all know that reparations is not a lofty goal. We all know that reparations is achievable, and this point is underscored by the proposals in America, which I believe took place in California and another state. But apparently there are 2 states in America that have proposed reparation settlements for the descendants of slavery in America. Alright, I believe one of the states actually suggested $223,000 per person as a payment for slavery. Now, when we consider what this would amount to, when you look at how many persons this disbursement will affect, it could very well be in the millions. Alright, it's definitely going to be in the millions. After the 5th person, you're already in the $1 million category. But when we talk about reparations for 400 years of slavery, I believe that $223,000 is actually a drop in the bucket. Alright, when you consider the amount of people who were slaved and brutalized and abused routinely from birth until death, I believe that $223,000 is a drop in the bucket. Alright, but CARICOM is here in the Bahamas, and despite the traffic, despite road closures, there's generally a mood of unity. I believe that there's a mood of unity currently in the Bahamas, as Caribbean community leaders are now here in our borders. And I would like to say that I think it is a welcome development. I happen to believe that CARICOM has not been given its due respect, and as a result of this, many of the pronouncements of CARICOM are actually disregarded by first world nations. Alright, but I believe that with closer collaboration, with more interrelationships being formed, I believe that we can actually see something progressive come out of this CARICOM assembly. All right, but also in the news from the local political side, we have the leader of the Coalition of Independence, Lincoln Bain, who recently was arrested while protesting the government and its immigration policy. The Coalition of Independence, led by Lincoln Bain, has been very vocal about the country's immigration problem. This party is a newly formed party, and what they have done is they have actually become a very polarizing body in the Bahamas, because historically the Bahamas has had a two-party political system. There have been several attempts by third parties to break this dynamic, which have all been largely unsuccessful. All right, I'm speaking about the Bahamas Democratic Movement. I'm speaking about the Democratic National Alliance. I'm speaking about the Coalition for Democratic Reform. All of these organizations actually attempted to break the two-party paradigm in the Bahamas and were unsuccessful. All right, but the Coalition of Independence has received a bit more public support. This was not evidenced in the polls. They managed to get quite a few votes, but it wasn't really enough to actually gain a seat. It wasn't really enough to be considered a wave. But I believe that the Coalition of Independence has actually polarized many citizens in their favor, because they've actually spoken about things that affect the everyday average citizen. We're talking about the difficulty in finding employment for citizens of the Bahamas, whereas many immigrant populations have sprung up and have now gained a larger presence, some by legal means and others by illegal means. Ultimately, we are all of one common origin, and the only thing that separates us is actually which colonizer would have kidnapped and enslaved our ancestors. Some of them spoke Spanish, some of them spoke French, some of them spoke English, and this became the basis for our artificial borders. This became the basis for the separation. All right, but in terms of a nation and its sovereignty, every nation must be able to protect its borders. Every nation must be able to control its points of entry, and every nation deserves the right to determine how a person will gain citizenship within its borders. Okay, and so from that vantage point, the Coalition of Independence has begun to speak out about the prevalence of shanty towns and informal communities which have sprung up around the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and the local citizenry is not able to arbitrarily seize any plot of land and build. The average citizen might actually find themselves being arrested for trying to build without a permit. And so these types of disparities, these types of inequalities are the basis of the Coalition of Independence and their agitation. All right, but as I said, the leader, Lincoln Bain, was arrested along with 17 of his followers, who are now facing charges of idle assembly, disorderly conduct, assaulting a police officer, etc. And before this video gets too long, I would like to ask my subscribers, particularly those from the Bahamas, do you believe that the arrest of Lincoln Bain on 2 occasions for a somewhat peaceful protest would indicate that the freedom of assembly is now in jeopardy? Do you believe that our constitutional right to assemble is now being threatened by the recent arrest of Lincoln Bain and his followers? You know, there have been many reports of threats which have been levied against the nation's prime minister, and persons from law enforcement, persons from the media began to construe that perhaps this third party and its followers were responsible for making threats against the prime minister and against various leaders in the country. Okay. Personally, I don't believe there's any justification for blaming them for the threats. And personally, I believe that it is all of our constitutional right to assemble. I believe civil disobedience is the one recourse of the masses. Aside from that, we basically would have to grin and bear whatever circumstances come our way. Okay. And so, family, I just wanted to bring you these brief updates from the Bahamas and from the CARICOM assemblies which are taking place in the Bahamas. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below about all of these dynamics. One love.